Hello, my name is Reece Wood, and today I will be pitching to you my film idea for the movie Scene, which is going to be a powerful drama that follows a quiet young boy who grows up in a racially divided neighborhood and unfortunately suffers the effects of a racial injustice, and it turns his whole life around and eventually leads to even personal conflict in his life between his family and his classmates. Why is it necessary? Despite the changes brought about by previous generations, we unfortunately still live in a time where racial injustice is broadcast pretty publicly, and nearly every headline regarding death by a police officer sports a person, often young, who is caught in an unjust system that they really have no knowledge about or interest in participating in. Scene will follow the life after this moment of injustice and asks what is the effect of the public legal attention for these young people. I believe this film is necessary because it helps to humanize the people behind the headlines and explores the emotional, psychological, and social toll of racial inequality outside of the courtroom and how it actually affects them on the personal level. Interviews will be taken of youth activists involved in movements such as Black Lives Matter and other anti-racial injustice organizations. Additionally, psychologists who specifically work with youth within these groups and communities will be consulted to get a better understanding of what the thought process is and how things are done. Additionally, families of victims who have suffered from racial profiling or other injustices will be interviewed to detail firsthand accounts of similar events to kind of cross-section them and get an idea of what is most accurate and what can be portrayed in the movie to get this point across. Finally, high school teachers and counselors will be consulted in diverse areas or those with heightened tension between police and citizens. And as I mentioned earlier, these psychologists and counselors will be targeted to these areas and hopefully will go hand in hand with the students and kind of share things that overlap with each other. The genre would be considered a drama rooted both in realism and true emotion, and this genre is important as it allows us to prioritize emotional character arcs and development, exploring these themes on a more personal level instead of just, reading it in a headline, and allowing them to connect it to their own lives in some instances. In this specific instance, it allows us to view systematic injustice not as simply like an idea, but as something that, as I have mentioned, derails a person's childhood in this case and limits their future potential. Le- Similarly to The Hate You Give, it builds this empathy by focusing on the life affected and not just the unjust system surrounding it. The issues addressed in this film, of course, will be racial profiling and police bias above all else, as these are the most prominent things that I think need to be tackled. They are very, very prominent to this day, and we as a nation need to overcome them and address them. However, sub-themes are present and will help to aid the film's message and impact on its audience. These will include social media activism and how that interacts with the protagonist's life, how his friends post about it, how his enemies post about it, how the news posts about it. Mental health in minority communities is another sub theme that I think should be highlighted as it's often neglected, and I believe that this could help bring about change for that if people see like how poorly it is invested into and how much it lets those communities down. Um, and lastly, intergenerational tension, which is found on both sides, in this case, black and white. Um, so, for example, the cops, like some grow up and they're rooted very deep that they should not like the other race just because, and they don't even have a real reason. And this, like I said, goes for both sides, and it just leads to unnecessary conflict between the two. Marketing, the target audience for this film would be members of younger generations in Gen Z and millennials, as support is usually the most common from these two. However, I do think older generations should seriously benefit and by no means are barred from seeing this movie, as they could use the most experience from it and could learn the most. Specifically, educators and students, as well as parents, are encouraged to attend and be the target audience, but to allow for the message to spread and come across the people it would most affect in day-to-day life. And to market the movie, I would partner with platforms like TikTok and Instagram. And in these advertisements, I'd like to share real youth stories that tie into the theme of the film to help support this idea of racial inequality. And I think additionally, you could release the film during Black History Month or Juneteenth to align with awareness efforts and bolster viewership. Some potential scenes to put into the film would be obviously at the beginning, the incident that the protagonist suffers. I'd like him to be with his white friend to add that element of like bridging the gap between inequality and helping each other out. And it could go as he is handcuffed and without cause and suffers a serious head injury when the officer slams his head into the hood of the car to search him. This is recorded by his friend and can launch the events of the whole movie. As mentioned earlier, I think inter struggle really is the highlight of this movie, and this can be highlighted through the family. Whilst most of them could support his idea to seek help and speak out against the police, his mother or somebody else could encourage him to keep quiet and not throw himself into even more trouble in their kind of racist town. And additionally, the protagonist's fellow classmates could treat him like a freak because of his viral video, and some could offer their support while others torment him and hold it over his head as ammo. And finally, the emotions to convey would be most notably empathy for a young person crushed under the weight of a viral injustice, and this can be conveyed using detailed camera work in which the raw emotion is captured in close-ups and is much more clear to the audience. Frustration towards the system we live in, where instances such as this one are allowed to happen on a day-to-day basis, and to convey this, I would employ the use of sound design and shot framing to bring about a feeling of unease to the audience that allows them to kind of make this connection themselves. And lastly, hope could be conveyed for future generations by by using lighting and color in certain areas. For example, as the movie begins, it could be cold and dark tones, but as it progresses and the protagonist receives his justice, things could become warmer, friendlier to look at. Thank you. I really hope that you like this movie pitch, and I hope that this presentation was to your standard.